The zoo was buzzing with life that bright summer afternoon. Families strolled leisurely, children tugged at their parents' hands, eagerly pointing at exotic animals, and vendors hollered about ice cream and balloons. The air smelled of popcorn and freshly cut grass, mingling with a hint of the wildness from the animal enclosures. It was an ordinary day, or so it seemed. Nobody expected the spectacle that would unfold, one that would forever be etched in the minds of those who witnessed it. In the heart of the zoo, a small monkey named Milo was notorious for his antics. His mischievous eyes and quick reflexes made him a crowd favorite, but his constant pranks had also earned him the ire of the zookeepers. Milo had a knack for escaping his enclosure, snatching food from unsuspecting visitors, and flinging objects at anyone who dared to come too close. Today was no different. "That monkey is trouble," grumbled Patrick, one of the junior zookeepers, as he wiped a smudge of banana peel off his shirt. Milo had hit him squarely on the back just minutes ago, causing a group of kids to burst into laughter. Patrick was not amused. He muttered under his breath, "One day, that little pest is going to push me too far." In the same zoo, a majestic lion named Sultan reigned as the undisputed king of the big cat enclosure. Sultan was everything one imagined a lion to be: large, powerful, and intimidating. His amber eyes could pierce through your soul, and his low growl was enough to send shivers down the spine. Visitors flocked to see him, often marveling at the sheer strength he exuded, even when he was lying lazily under the shade of a tree. But Sultan's ferocious reputation was not entirely accurate. There was a side to him that few knew. Patrick, still seething from Milo's prank, stormed into the staff area, where his colleagues were taking a break. "That monkey's going to drive me insane," he vented, slamming his coffee cup onto the table. His coworker Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You just a monkey, Patrick. You need to calm down," she said. "Calm down? That little brat threw a banana peel at me, in front of a crowd. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" Patrick fumed. Sarah shrugged, clearly unimpressed. "It's part of the job. Animals don't care about your pride. Just deal with it." But Patrick wasn't ready to let it go. His frustration boiled over, clouding his judgment. "You know what? Let's see how brave that monkey is when he's not the one in control," he muttered darkly. Without giving it much thought, Patrick grabbed a net and made his way to Milo's enclosure. The little monkey was perched on a branch, nibbling on a piece of fruit, blissfully unaware of what was coming. Patrick moved quickly, cornering Milo with the net. Startled, Milo tried to leap away, but Patrick was faster. Within seconds, the mischievous monkey was captured. "Let's see how you like being the one feeling threatened," Patrick said, his voice low and menacing. Meanwhile, the lion's enclosure was bustling with visitors. Sultan lay in his usual spot, his massive head resting on his paws, seemingly unbothered by the world around him. Cameras clicked, and children squealed in delight, daring each other to get closer to the fence. Patrick arrived carrying the squirming monkey. His actions were reckless and unapproved, but his judgment was too clouded by anger to care. As he approached Sultan's enclosure, he hesitated for a brief moment. "This will teach you not to mess with me," he whispered, before throwing Milo over the fence and into the lion's den. The moment the monkey hit the ground, chaos erupted. Visitors screamed in horror, their happy chatter replaced by panicked cries. A mother shielded her child's eyes while others frantically shouted for the zookeepers. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing the unfolding drama. Milo, disoriented and terrified, froze for a moment as he realized where he was. The vast enclosure was nothing like his cozy treetop home. The ground was barren, save for a few patches of grass and rocks. And then there was Sultan. The lion stirred, lifting his massive head to observe the intruder. His amber eyes locked onto Milo, who was now trembling uncontrollably. The crowd held its breath, anticipating the inevitable. Sultan rose to his feet, his muscles rippling under his golden fur. He began to move toward the monkey, each step deliberate and heavy, his gaze unyielding. Milo's survival instincts kicked in. He darted toward the nearest rock, his small frame trembling as he clung to it. The lion stopped a few feet away, tilting his head, as if trying to understand this strange, trembling creature. The monkey's desperate squeals filled the air, adding to the tension. At that moment, a senior zookeeper named Mr. Harris arrived on the scene. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Patrick threw the monkey into the lion's cage," someone from the crowd shouted. Mr. Harris's face turned pale. He quickly grabbed a radio and began barking orders. "Get the tranquilizers ready and prepare to separate the animals immediately." Back in the enclosure, something unexpected happened. As Sultan stepped closer, instead of pouncing, he paused. The lion lowered his massive head and sniffed the monkey, who had curled into a ball, bracing for the end. Sultan's nostrils flared as he took in Milo's scent. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the lion stepped back and sat down. The silence was deafening. Milo peeked out from behind his tiny hands, his wide eyes meeting Sultan's calm gaze. The monkey, sensing no immediate danger, slowly uncurled. He took a cautious step forward, his tiny hands trembling. The lion remained still, watching with an almost curious expression. The crowd gasped as Milo climbed onto the lion's back, holding onto his mane as if it were the branch of a tree. Sultan let out a low, rumbling purr, which sounded more like a gentle hum than a growl. It was an interaction nobody could have predicted. Mr. Harris arrived at the enclosure, his heart pounding. He froze in disbelief at the sight before him. "That's impossible," he murmured. Visitors began cheering, their fear replaced by awe. Camera phones captured the moment as Milo and Sultan sat together, an unlikely duo that defied nature itself. Patrick, who had been watching from a distance, felt a pang of regret. He hadn't intended for this to happen. He had expected chaos, not this strange and heartwarming scene. As Mr. Harris ordered the team to carefully retrieve the monkey, Patrick knew he was in serious trouble. What had started as a moment of frustration had turned into a lesson no one at the zoo would forget. Milo and Sultan had proven that even in the wildest of circumstances, compassion could triumph over instinct. The monkey's initial reaction. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Milo clung tightly to Sultan's mane, his tiny body still trembling from the ordeal. Though the immediate danger seemed to have passed, the little monkey was far from calm. Every instinct in his small frame screamed for him to run, climb, and escape this strange, terrifying place. But Sultan, the mighty lion, made no threatening move. Instead, Sultan's massive golden eyes held a calmness that contrasted sharply with the chaos outside the enclosure. He sat down gracefully, his tail swishing against the dusty ground as he allowed Milo to remain perched on his back. For a moment, it seemed as if they were sizing each other up, two vastly different creatures trying to understand the other. The visitors were stunned into silence, their cameras still rolling, capturing what no one could have anticipated. In the crowd, a child whispered to his mother, "Why isn't the lion eating him?" The question lingered in the air, unanswered. Milo, emboldened by the lion's lack of aggression, tentatively climbed down from Sultan's back. He landed lightly on the ground and scurried a few feet away, watching the lion closely. Sultan simply turned his head, his gaze tracking the monkey's movements but with no hint of malice. The monkey's natural curiosity began to outweigh his fear. Milo edged closer to Sultan, sniffing the air cautiously. Then, with surprising audacity, the monkey reached out and gave the lion's paw a tentative poke. The crowd gasped collectively. Sultan didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as though amused by the monkey's antics. A surprising twist. Just as the tension began to ease, Sultan did something extraordinary. He let out a deep, rumbling purr that resonated through the air like distant thunder. Milo froze, his ears twitching as he tried to decipher the sound. Slowly he approached again, this time climbing up Sultan's side and perching on his broad shoulder. The lion, unfazed, allowed the monkey to settle there. Milo began tugging gently at Sultan's thick mane, inspecting it like he would the branches of a tree. The crowd erupted into laughter and applause, the fear from earlier dissipating into delight. Zookeepers watched in awe, their radios buzzing with confused chatter. "What's happening?" someone asked over the radio. "Is this lion playing with the monkey?" "It's not just playing," Mr. Harris replied, his voice tinged with wonder. "It's protecting him." A bond forms. Over the next several minutes, Milo and Sultan's bond grew more evident. Milo, once frightened and trembling, now scampered around the lion as if they were lifelong companions. He hopped onto Sultan's back, ran down his tail, and even darted around his paws. Sultan remained calm throughout, occasionally letting out a soft rumble that seemed to reassure the monkey. Visitors couldn't get enough of the heartwarming sight. Phones and cameras clicked incessantly as people captured the unlikely duo. Some even started live streaming the event, and within minutes the scene was trending online. Behind the scenes, Mr. Harris and his team worked frantically to figure out how to safely separate the two animals without causing distress. "We can't just tranquilize them now," Harris said. "Look at them. We'd risk breaking that trust." The truth behind the lion's behavior. As the team strategized, one of the senior zookeepers pulled Harris aside. "There's something you need to know about Sultan," he said. "What is it?" Harris asked, his brow furrowed. The zookeeper hesitated before explaining, "Sultan was raised alongside primates when he was a cub. Before he came to our zoo, he lived in a wildlife sanctuary where they had a mixed enclosure. He was practically raised by monkeys for the first year of his life." Harris's eyes widened in realization. That explains everything. Sultan doesn't see Milo as prey, he sees him as family. The zookeeper nodded. "It's a rare case, but it happens. Sultan must recognize something in Milo's behavior that reminds him of his early days." This revelation made the situation even more extraordinary. Sultan wasn't just tolerating Milo, he was protecting and nurturing him, perhaps out of some long-buried memory. Public reactions and media frenzy. By now, the story had spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up the live streams, and social media was flooded with captions like "Unlikely Friendship," "Lion Befriends Monkey," and "The King of Beasts Shows His Gentle Side." People around the world were captivated by the story, and the zoo became the center of attention overnight. Visitors flocked to the lion's enclosure, hoping to catch a glimpse of the pair. Some brought flowers and gifts for the zookeepers, thanking them for preserving such a beautiful moment. A lesson learned. Patrick, the zookeeper who had thrown Milo into the lion's cage, watched the unfolding events from a distance. His heart sank as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. What he had intended as a cruel punishment had turned into a global phenomenon, but that didn't absolve him of his recklessness. Later that day, Harris confronted him. "What were you thinking, Patrick?" he demanded. "I wasn't," Patrick admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I was angry, and I acted without thinking. You endangered both animals and put the entire zoo at risk," Harris said sternly. "This could have ended in tragedy." Patrick nodded, knowing there was no excuse for his actions. "I'll accept whatever punishment you think is fair," he said. Harris sighed. "We all make mistakes, but this one was serious. You're suspended until further notice, and if you're lucky enough to come back, you'll be on probation." By the end of the day, Milo and Sultan had become the zoo's most famous residents. The pair were carefully separated after hours, with Milo returning to his enclosure and Sultan retreating to his shaded spot. The zookeepers planned to reunite them periodically, recognizing the unique bond they had formed. As for Patrick, he used the experience as a lesson in humility and the importance of treating animals with respect and care. The zoo implemented stricter guidelines to ensure the safety of its animals and staff moving forward. The story of Sultan and Milo became a symbol of unexpected friendship, teaching the world that even in the most unlikely circumstances, compassion and trust could triumph. Visitors left the zoo that day with a renewed sense of wonder, their hearts warmed by the sight of the king of beasts showing his gentle side.